I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Myron Magnet's new book is The Founders at Home, The Building of America, 1735 to 1817. We will quickly get on to other houses. We're now at Mount Vernon and observing George Washington, a reluctant leader, but then again the man who invents the presidency. Mount Vernon, when we visit today, is there the character that we can find? Does that remain in the house, Myron?
Very much so, because, he was a conservative revolutionary. He finally inherits the house that his father built, which is actually quite a little house, and he gradually enlarges it as his importance and his fortune grow. But he never does away with what is already there. So if you look at Mount Vernon, it's kind of funny. The facade is lopsided. The cupola is 18 inches off center. The windows are in these really weird places. And he made a sketch to show how it would look if you regularized the windows. But then it would mess up the beautiful conformation of the rooms inside. So he figured, let's not do it. Let's go with what works. So it's a house that evolved, and it respects its history, even as it is getting grander and bigger. And finally, when he's at his peak of importance, he gets one grand dining room built, which expresses Washington the president. And I'm sure that he had many wonderful times in it, but of course I always think of it as the room where he lay in state after he died for three days under its grand Palladian window, because the only thing in life that scared him was being buried alive, and he wanted his family to be damn sure he was dead before they stuck him in the vault.
We're going back north to the Federalists. Myron, we go immediately to John Jay, whom you so carefully identify as the virtuous man in the Revolution, a man who, he lost his wife young, and he lived, I think, 3 decades after her death.
Yeah.
And yet his house and his personality, his house is quite gorgeous. I've got pictures up, the John Jay homestead.
Yeah.
His house represents a man of first of all, the courts and the law, but endless diplomacy, endlessly serving his country, duty, all those
Always.
early years of the Revolution.
Always. And, let me say, we think of him as our first Chief Justice, but his greatest accomplishment was negotiating the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War. And this was, again, another quintessentially American action. He's given instructions by Congress to take all his advice from the French. Well, the French have their own designs on the New World, and they want an America that is small, weak, surrounded by hostile powers, and dependent on France, and squabbling with England. And John Jay understands this, and he sees that, in fact, he can make a peace with Great Britain that makes us big all the way to the Mississippi, powerful, and a real trading partner of Great Britain, and despite what the Congress, led by James Madison, tells him to do, he goes out there and makes this peace that just takes the breath away, even from his political enemies in America. They say, my God, we never imagined that we could get a peace this good. So it was he who set his stamp on American foreign relations for decades to come. He invented the special relationship of the English-speaking countries, and did so not because he plotted it out with other colleagues, but because he saw this clearly being the man on the spot, and did it. But as for duty, first he starts off running a spy ring in Westchester County.
Oh, the scene, Myron, we must tell it. He's at dinner in the John Jay homestead,
yeah.
And his son is there with his college friend, who just happens to be James Fenimore Cooper.
Can you imagine that?
And John Jay starts telling stories about spy rings because he was the Chief Justice of New York and had to prosecute many of these neighbors who were seen as spying or deceptive, one of whom, of course, was majorly, but that's another story. So he's telling this to James Fenimore Cooper, who is remembering this years later for the novel The Spy.
Soaking it up like a sponge. And this is the first best-selling American novel. And it's about John Jay's spy. So it's just history is filled with extraordinary coincidences.
I want to go through the 5 things that Cooper hears from in your list, Myron. The unity of the country is permanent. The Federalists are right, and strong central control is necessary. Right away, they knew that they were going to have a fight. And that Washington is a world historical figure, and this, most important of all, trust no one.
Trust no one. Trust no one.
That's a diplomat.
And that's including even in Congress. He says there's as much secrecy here as in a girls' boarding school.